How's it going, guys? It's your boy Kanji FPL, and I gotta just be honest with you. Like, I told you guys to bet against Erling Haaland this week. Like, I knew the king was gonna come through, man. I knew it, and I had a feeling Haaland was gonna blank. I think that was the most important thing. I activated the wild card. My rank is skyrocketing. I gotta break this down for you guys. Let's get into it. Heading into international break with a solid green arrow from 300k to 80k. I ended the week with 66 points. I am absolutely delighted with that. In fact, it really just came down to captaincy. It was all on the back of the king himself, Mo Salah. Mo Salah, he came from Allah. Bro, Mo, I love you. You're so underrated. You're such a great player in terms of just footy in general, but in the league, you've just been so consistent. 14 returns in a row. It's unbelievable. In fact, I'm really surprised that more people don't own Mo Salah on FPL. I think he's less than 50% owned in most FPL teams. Like that, that's ridiculous to me. You know what was even more ridiculous though? The amount of people that captained Haaland. It was 5.3 million people. Like I genuinely couldn't believe it. Like Haaland was playing against Arsenal away from home, and the majority of people still captained him. Like that's mad. I really thought that Son and Salah would have got the majority of the captains, but I guess there's just so much fear going around with Erling Haaland these days, and I'm just happy that even those of you that captained Son, you still won. I know it doesn't feel as nice because you only won by 1 point, but you still did. You can take it as like a marginal victory. But for those of us that captain Mo Salah, we feasted this week. Like we won this week, bar none. There's actually something that FPL Harry tweeted, and it's actually a website called fplform.com. And what you can do is you can type in your FPL ID, and it'll tell you how high you rank amongst other managers in FPL. So over the past 5 seasons, I finished in the top 30,000. Like that's kind of crazy to think that I'm in the top 0.3% of FPL managers. Like it's pretty surprising. But yeah, I just wanted to remind you, like in case you see my team and you're like, what is this goof doing without Erling Haaland? Well, listen, like I can't be that bad if I've been finishing in the top 30k the last couple of seasons, you know? But anyway, going back to my team, I think the key thing I wanted to point out is the fact that it looks slightly different than where it was in my last video. In my previous video, I actually had Bruno Fernandes and Virgil van Dijk in the team. Now I have Kulusevski and Trent Alexander-Arnold. So why the sudden change? The key was actually Saka dropping in price. Because he dropped by zero point 0.1 before the deadline, I'm able to afford the draft on the left, and that has my favorite player in the league, Trent Alexander-Arnold. That's my dog, bro. You know when you just watch football and you just have players that you love to cheer for? That's Trent for me. So I always have a Liverpool bias. I'm always going to try my best to get to Trent. But it's just such a weird price point, you know? Because like in a game where everyone is so underpriced, Trent is the only one that feels like fairly priced or even overpriced. So I don't think Trent is a good pick long term, but I really just thought about it. And if I'm going to go against Haaland, I really want to get to the explosivity and the consistency that Trent provides. You know, like over larger periods of time, the last 5 seasons, Trent has been probably the best FPL pick in the game, picking up 10 to 15 clean sheets, 10 to 15 attacking returns with a bunch of bonus sprinkled in here and there. I absolutely love Trent, and we all know how good he is. So I'm happy to have him in my team. I felt like I was settling by going for Virgil van Dijk, and it honestly feels much better to have Trent. If I feel more satisfied, I feel more at peace, and I love my team much more having Trent in it. The key to it was as well that I think I was going to downgrade Bruno Fernandes to Matoma or potentially go up to Saka. I wasn't really sure about what I was going to do in that price point, but because now I've gotten to Kulusevski and Madison, my moves are very simple. It's Kulusevski to Matoma and Madison to Saka long term. And I do have enough money in the bank to get to that. Before the price drop, I didn't have enough money. So I'm just thankful that there are people that sold Saka just like I did in the previous weeks and he ended up falling in price. So thankful for that and happy that I'm able to afford my guy Trent on the team. Speaking of Trent, he really didn't perform this week. You know, he only put up a 1 pointer, and I was talking all this good stuff about him, and he just blanks. Thanks, bro. But you know what? I know this wasn't a Trent fixture. The Brighton game was going to be very open, going back and forth. In fact, Trent played really well, but from a defensive perspective, and you won't hear that in the media, though, because there's just a negative stigma associated with Trent and defending, but he really locked on Matoma. Every time Matoma got the ball, he took the ball off him. He intersected a couple passes, some that were coming to his feet, some that were playing him behind. Trent was there blocking them, and he played really, really well. In fact, Matoma only really had a good time in the game when Trent was subbed off and Gomez came in. I wasn't trying to see, Gomez on Matoma like one more time. I was getting flashbacks to last year, But either way, I'm just really glad that I have Trent in my team. Even though he blanked, I know he's going to reward me in the next couple games with Everton, Luton, Forest, Sheffield, and Fulham coming up. I'm keeping him in those. I'm keeping him in my team for all of those fixtures without a doubt. Like he's my way of getting enough points to make up for not having Haaland in my team. Moving on to my defense, we've got Matt Turner. I knew I was going to start Turner over Areola because Crystal Palace were playing Nottingham Forest, and I knew that Crystal Palace were a very weak offense without Ebriche Eze and without Elise. I felt like they were very blunt, and that actually played out. Even though they actually had Edouard come back into the game this week, they didn't really create that much. In fact, when Crystal Palace put the ball forward, they find themselves just going backwards, and a lot of the defenders get up a lot of BPS because they have so many passing tiers, because they don't have enough creativity in the team. So instead of just trying to force it, they just recycle the ball a lot. So yeah, I feel like Palace are really strong from a defensive perspective, but offensively, without their talisman, they're pretty weak. But that was a great 6-pointer for Turner. Moving on, we got my boy Kieran Trippier. The guy is the most consistent defender in the game, bar none. He actually ended up with a 6-pointer somehow. It was a 2-2 game, and he has the assist, but he ends up with 2 bonus points. It was a little bit awkward. It was weird to see Trippier put up 6 points still. Like he's just so consistent. It's mad. It's honestly uncanny, to be honest. But listen, for those of you that don't have him and they're trying to cover him with Shar, yeah, tripping, bro. But at least we gotta talk about Matty Cash. The guy is probably the best value defender in the game right now. His attacking statistics are the best of all defenders in the game. In fact, I know he blanked this week. He had a really big chance though, because Luka Dean was on the left wing. He crosses it to the back post. Matty Cash takes it, hits it, but it was saved by the keeper. If that went in, that would have been a nice 7 or 8 pointer coming from Matty Cash. And I honestly thought he had a chance at a clean sheet, but I guess Wolves are just very underrated. Honestly, offensively, they've been pretty consistent in terms of scoring goals. So whenever your defense is playing against a Wolves team, maybe they won't keep the clean sheet this time around. Moving on to my midfield, we've got triple Spurs, Maddison, Son, and Kulu. And I know you're thinking, like, you must be mad. Triple Spurs, like, what is that? But it was just like a punt. Like, I knew I wanted to get Maddison to Saka long term. I knew I wanted to do Kulusevski to Matoma long term, but they have the Luton fixture. They had the Fulham fixture. Man, Kulu had created a really good big chance for Richarlison. He was on the right wing, cuts back on his left foot, crosses it to the back post. It bounces right to Richarlison, and he honestly had an open net, but he puts it over the bar. I could not believe my eyes, man. He missed a really big chance there. In fact, Richarlison missed another big chance where Maddison was driving the ball inwards, plays a through pass between the center back and the right back, goes right to Richarlison. He goes and he shoots it to the back post, but it was saved by the keeper. And it's one of those things where, like, if you get an early goal, it changes the complexion of the whole game. So for those of you that captained Son, you must have been so disappointed to see those early chances missed. And honestly, Son had a really big chance himself where he actually took the ball in and he passes it to Pedro Porro. Pedro Porro has a one-on-one with the keeper, but he slots it wide. Again, if any of those chances go in, it changes the game. So it is what it is. Those of you that captain Son, you got to live with it. It was probably the correct captaincy call. It just didn't work out like how you imagined. But I ended up with the king, and this is the reason that I wanted to wildcard. If I didn't wildcard, I actually would have taken a hit and done Haaland to Watkins and then Mbumo to Salah, and I probably would have captained Son. But because I brought Kulusevski into my team, I actually captained Mo. And I know you're thinking like, hey, if you had Udogi instead of Trent and you had Bruno Fernandes, who also blanked instead of Kulusevski, you'd be up on points. You're right, but then I would have lost points on captaincy. So it actually worked out for me to actually bring Kulusevski into my team. I know it sounds completely weird, but that's just how my brain thinks. I probably don't want to expose myself to 3 Spurs attackers plus captaincy. Like, that's mad. But Son and Madison and captain, that kind of makes more sense, So it's one of those things where it worked out in my favor this time around. And honestly, my strikers are probably 2 of the most consistent players in the entire league. Julian Alvarez is absolutely mad. Whenever you look at Alvarez in terms of his finishing, I always find that whenever he gets a shot, he buries it. He's so clinical. He's just so underrated. And I think Pep doesn't have a choice but to play him week in and week out. And at the end of the day, Alvarez is covering Haaland at 6.8. He's replacing KDB. And honestly, Gundogan doesn't really have a replacement in the squad. I feel like Foden is more so just stepping into that role creatively, but realistically, there's a gap in terms of what Man City had last season and the players they have and the players that they're using this year. It's not being made up by Kovacic and Nunez. Those guys aren't on Gundogan's level. But that's why I just think Alvarez is so important to them, because he provides that X factor. Moving on to Ollie Watkins, he's so talismanic for Aston Villa. I just think he is the budget Harry Kane. I'm going to say it week in and week out, the budget Harry Kane, because he is. The only problem with Watkins is that he doesn't have penalties. If he had penalties, he'd be a season keeper, especially at that price point. But with the good fixtures coming up, you need to have access to the Aston Villa attack. So I'm really glad that I have Watkins in my squad. Moving on to my bench, I was always going to bench Areola, but I'm happy to have him in the squad. Same thing with Archer. He's the cheapest 4.5, so he's my third striker, but he's just getting minutes, so I'm happy to have him in on the bench. Now, for me, if I had Virgil van Dijk, there was a potential chance I would have gone with Mitchell, and I could have played Mitchell, but again, I don't think I'd be able to live with myself. Having Trent in my team, seeing him getting a haul, maybe a clean sheet, maybe an attacking return, and not having him started in my squad, I would have been pretty disappointed. Like, if you start with Trent, you got to play him every week. And honestly, I was really surprised to see Ben White with a 9-pointer against Man City. Like, that is mad. If anything, that's a good thing for me. Because, that meant Haaland blanked. But for White to pick up the clean sheet and a bunch of bonus points, that just means good things for me long term. And I think I made the best Arsenal pick defensively. And I think you'll see a lot of Game Week 10 wildcarders trying to get to Gabriel. But I don't know if Gabriel's nailed. I wouldn't be surprised if Arteta just rotates him whenever he pleases. Because I don't really think he trusts him. I don't know, for me, Gabriel was like one of my favorite defenders last year, but I think the reason why I have to be so thankful this week is actually more so towards Saliba. Saliba is more nailed in the team, and honestly, the way that Saliba defends, he completely locked up Erling Haaland. There's one moment where like Haaland's running in with the entire half, all the space in behind, and Saliba just bodies him and Haaland goes to the floor. I could not believe my eyes, bro. Like, that was a game-changing moment. And I really feel like we have to put Saliba into the conversation about being the second best defender in the entire league. I've always given Virgil van Dijk the benefit of the doubt, but even as a Liverpool fan now, I just gotta admit, Saliba just gives me those old prime Virgil van Dijk vibes, and I haven't seen it from Virgil in a while. So let's see if having this competition in the league makes Virgil van Dijk step up, because right now he's just not as good as he used to be. I think the key to FPL when you're looking at people's teams is understanding how the rotation works. You can't just look at the picks that I have and say, oh, those are good players, but what about the fixtures? And for me, I want to give you a defensive rotation matrix that explains why I picked the players that I did. The key to it is actually going with Mitchell. So I knew for sure I was going to keep Trippier, Cash, and White, and I want to keep them long term. The only player that I feel like I am missing that I do want is probably maybe a Manchester City defender at some point, and Estupiñán. I feel like those are the two players that I have on my radar that I don't own. But for now, I think for the next 6 weeks, I don't think I'm going to be looking to make a defensive transfer, because I think my defenders rotate really well. The only tough decisions I feel like I'll face will be in Game Week 9 and Game Week 13. So let me break it down for you. In Game Week 9, we have Cash, who plays West Ham at home, and White, who plays Chelsea away. So I feel like West Ham and Chelsea are equal from an offensive sense, and I feel like Arsenal are better defensively than Aston Villa, but Cash has more attacking threat than Ben White. So it's pretty even, but I think I'll just lean towards starting Matty Cash because he's at home. In Game Week 13, I have to choose between Trippier, who plays Chelsea at home, and Cash, who plays Spurs away. And I feel like I trust Spurs attack more, and I trust Chelsea less from a defensive perspective. And on top of that, Trippier is at home. So I feel like it's an obvious choice to just go with Trippier. And I feel like if I'm ever in doubt, I should probably just start Trippier because I trust him more as an FPL pick long term anyway. What's up, guys? I just noticed I forgot to mention something. I think I forgot to mention that Mitchell is really important because in Game Week 11, when Trippier plays Arsenal at home, and in Game Week 13, when Trent plays Manchester City away, I'm able to rotate Mitchell into my squad. And that's why I feel like having somebody that's a differential that rotates well in the short term is very important, and it just helps you get those extra points in defense that other people aren't able to get to. So that's just where I am from a defensive perspective, but rotations are important. But what's even more important is captaincy. My captaincy dilemma screen has actually slightly changed. The matrix is staying majority of the same, but there are a couple things that have changed. In Game Week 13, I've actually lost the option of captaining Bruno Fernandes. And in Game Week 9, Son is actually off the list and I've replaced him with Kieran Trippier. The reason being is that I don't think I can trust Son right now over Salah. I just think it's a no-brainer to captain Salah, especially with a couple factors. One, I have 3 Spurs mids in my team. And 2, I just think Salah has just been giving me so much more consistency. Son has been more inconsistent, but more explosive. Because Son is playing up top, I feel like he actually has a higher chance of getting a hat-trick, but I feel like Salah has given me a higher chance of getting 1 return, just with how consistent Liverpool have been and how consistent he's been over a longer period of time. The only issue is that Salah is in the early kickoff this week. And on top of that, it's Everton, which is a derby match. And I feel like a lot of times, even though it's at home, these games usually end with low scoring games. And I feel like there isn't as much upside as I feel like Erling Haaland has against Brighton. Realistically, my goal isn't to get the highest scoring captain over the next couple weeks. The goal for me is just to be consistent and just pick up a 6 pointer with my captaincy week in and week out. And I feel like Trippier is probably a safer bet this week because I really watched that Crystal Palace game against Nottingham Forest, and Palace were really, really poor. They just don't have any attacking threat at all. Without Eze, without Elise, they're very blunt. And I feel like Newcastle's defense is trustworthy. And on top of that, Trippier has attacking threat. Whenever they keep a clean sheet, he always has a chance to get an assist. And on top of that, even if he doesn't get an assist, he'll probably end up with 7 or 8 points because he's a bonus points magnet. So I know it sounds controversial, but I'm actually leaning towards captaining Trippier this week. It seems really weird, and I know when I look at predicted points, he won't be the captain that the algorithm will recommend for me, but I just trust my instinct, and sometimes you have to use your eye test, and I want to be safe, and I think I'm just going to captain Kieran Trippier. Moving on to game week 10 onwards, I feel like it's pretty simple. Nothing has really changed. I will likely captain Saka in game week 10 if he goes out in the Chelsea fixture and plays 90 minutes. If he doesn't, then I will likely just captain Mo Salah against Nottingham Forest. In game week 11, I got to captain Mo Salah. In game week 12, I'll likely captain Saka because 1, he's at home, and 2, I think scoring against Burnley is easier than scoring against Wolves. In game week 13, this is going to be the captaincy decision that impacts my entire phase 2 of FPL. And I think during these weeks, if Son scores in game week 13, I think I'm going to be flying from a captaincy perspective because I'm pretty confident in Saka in game week 10 and game week 12. I'm confident in Salah in 11, but 13 is one where I am questioning who to captain. And I think it's the most difficult captaincy. The reason why I'm on Son is because I feel like Aston Villa play a really high line, and I think that Spurs will be able to take advantage of that. Get in behind and have some big chances. I'm just hoping that he'll be able to score because I know the chances are going to come. There's no doubt. Whether Spurs are dominating the ball or Spurs are on the counterattack, Son will definitely pick up a chance or two, and I'm just going to back Son to score it because he's one of the best finishers in the game. So that's just kind of where I am right now. For me, I think it's easy. Game week 14 and 15, Salah captain. There's no doubt in my mind. And if you're ever debating between Saka or Salah captain, let me give you these 3 points. 1, Salah is more experienced and he's more trustworthy in a larger sample size. Number 2, Salah plays for a more attacking team. Number 3, Salah is more explosive because whenever Saka gets penalties, you don't know if he's actually going to take them himself. So because of that, whenever I'm looking at game week 14 and 15, to me, it's very obvious to captain Salah. And I think that those of you that don't have Salah in your team, I think you're making a mistake. I think Salah is the best captain in game week 14 and 15. And at any point over these fixtures, you can generally just captain Salah and not be too fussed about it. So if you don't have Salah, I think you've got to bring him in your team. And if you're looking to go against him, I think, y'all crazy, man. Thank you so much for watching the video. I just gotta be honest with you. I cannot believe the growth that this channel has gone through. To be at 40 subscribers 2 weeks ago and to almost be hitting 70, it's mad. My goal for the season was to be at 50 subscribers when it ended. But now I'm changing my goal. I want to try to get to 100 subscribers. Genuinely, each like and each comment, it all means the world to me because I'm such a small channel. And if I'm out there providing some value to you, all you have to do is drop a like or a comment and it encourages me to provide more content to you guys. Hopefully I'm able to impact you guys and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Peace.